Tonight, a Columbia man and his family finally have closure some 80 years after his uncle went missing during World War II. Chris English has more on this story, including how a popular DNA matching site played a role in bringing a soldier home.
A soldier who was killed fighting overseas was laid to rest today here at Fort Jackson National Cemetery in a journey that spanned over 80 years.
I only met him one time that I can remember, and he was born in 1920 and I was born in 1937.
On Monday, Bob Pittman sat on the porch of his West Columbia home in the rocking chair that had been reserved for his late wife and opened up about his uncle, Second Lieutenant John Harvey Harris. Harris, a World War II Army Air Corps bombardier, was killed in action in April 1944 after a bombing run over Brunswick, Germany. The Ford B-24 Liberator Harris and the other 9 members of the crew were aboard crashed, but the Army wasn't sure where.
They told them first that it crashed in the English Channel, and then they came back later and said no, it crashed in the ocean.
It wasn't until 2015, 71 years later, that an eyewitness came forward with a clue about where the plane had really gone down.
Well, it just so happened that a 14 or 15-year-old child saw the plane crash, and he's the one that told them where to look.
It turns out the crash site was nowhere near the water.
It crashed in a field that had been freshly plowed, and it went down about 10 feet.
Even though several sets of dog tags had been recovered from the crash site, the Army was having difficulty matching up the DNA from the remains to anyone in their database. That's when officials turned to Ancestry.com. Using the DNA matching features of the popular genealogy site, the Army was eventually able to locate Pittman. Before his uncle's remains were returned to the family, the Army sent several items that had been found at the German crash site.
I have his dog tags in there that they sent me, his wings that were on his uniform, and also his high school ring from Tifton, Ohio.
The Army arranged to fly the remains of Second Lieutenant Harris to Charlotte. Friday, Pittman was at the airport as the flag-draped casket carrying his uncle arrived. He took a moment to pay his respects before an honor guard escorted the casket to a Lexington funeral home. This afternoon, Army Air Corps Second Lieutenant John Harris was laid to rest at Fort Jackson National Cemetery after receiving full military funeral honors, including a rifle detail and, of course, taps. Pittman said after the service here that he was thinking of his mother and how relieved and happy she would have been to know that finally, after 80 years, her brother John had come home. At Fort Jackson National Cemetery, Chris English, News 19, WLTX.